Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from Sidegame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I'm joined by my illustrious co-host, Dan from Chairman of the Board.
Hey everybody, yeah, good to be here. Good for to sit back and relax and let Mackenzie do all the work behind the scenes when it's on his side.
He's totally right here. This is our 6th episode of Corporate Cardboard, so pretty dang fantastic. We're getting in a good swing of things, kind of getting comfortable with the whole streaming side, and really just enjoying the conversation at this point. So awesome, excited to have you on, Dan, today. And let's get into our conversation. So like always, we're going to go ahead and start this conversation with the games that we've been playing. And Dan, I'm going to have you start us off. What have you been playing recently?
Okay, yes, I'm going to start with something a bit lighter. I'm going to build up to more complex games. And actually, this episode, I've got all new stuff, so I feel very cool and a lot of very cult of the new this episode. So the first game I'm going to talk about is a game called Dice Miner. Dice Miner, I'm not quite sure how well this one did on Kickstarter, but it's recently been fulfilled. And it was actually backed by my brother, who we kind of share our collection together. And I wasn't knowing what to expect. I didn't know anything about this one. It's actually a really lovely little dice drafting game that uses a mechanism that I haven't seen before, where essentially you have a big bunch of dice kind of loaded onto this mountainscape, I suppose. And that's going to determine which dice are available for drafting, because you can only ever draft the dice at the pinnacles of each of these mountaintops. And these dice are going to do things such as just giving you points, or you can see from the image here that there's ones for just your standard pip values from 1 to 6, or sorry, 1 to 5. And the idea is you're trying to draft those ones in order to get them in order, because if you had like the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, then you accumulate all those points. But if you didn't have a 1, then you couldn't score the 2, 3, or 4. So you need to get them in order to do that. You've got ones where they're going to give you negative points, but if you get other dice, you can convert them into positive points. And it's just a really simple game, as you are just drafting more and more of these dice. You are using all these different tools to your advantage to try and mitigate, to get the best points you can. And I love the fact that it's only played over 3 rounds, but in each round to round, you're actually just keeping the dice you've drafted previously. So the scoring really does ramp up, and you can actually end up scoring quite a few points. And it has a real nice game arc as you progress and get more and more dice to play with. Very simple, kind of that, simple dice drafting, but that almost like Yahtzee style, rolling the dice, see what you get kind of thing. And it's just a real nice combination of mechanisms. I've actually really enjoyed this one, and I think a lot of people could enjoy this. It's very family friendly, really charming, and I don't know, just something about it has a certain degree of magic, and I really enjoy it.
Wow, that's awesome. Really glad to hear that a dice game is kind of hitting home with you, especially when it's with the Yahtzee mechanic. For me, sometimes that feels a little tiresome, that mechanic, but this looks really fun. I love that you're using this gimmick to great effect here, and I'm glad that it works. I'm glad that it is fun, and I like the kind of mesh of unique dice as well as like standard pips. So that's really cool. I like this. That's excellent.
Yeah, lovely game, lovely game.
Awesome. So I'll go ahead and go with probably the lightest game that I'll be talking about. And this is actually my newest 10 to the collection. So this is fantastic. This is one that I really can't get enough of. It is Capital Lux 2 Generation. So this game is absolutely amazing. So I was so impressed by this one. So this was recommended to me by Tia over on Tekhenu, and she said that this game, she was so shocked about it because she literally bought it for the artwork and because she had played the base game once or twice. This is a re-implementation of Capital Lux. This is a card game that came out a while ago that is kind of an area control game, but's abstracted into cards. Very simple card play. You're going to draw a card on your turn. Sorry, not draw a card. You'll have a hand of 6 cards you'll draft. And on your turn, you either play one into like your own personal area, which are your points, or you put it into the center area, which will give you an ability, but also increases the threshold of points you're able to score. So it kind of sounds weird when you think about it, but the simple thing is that you either are trying to increase your own score, which is kind of that like the area control, right? Or you're trying to get a value that's higher than anybody else's. Because you get a bonus card throughout the game. And if you are able to win these majorities at the end of every round, you get some of the cards from the center as bonus cards. But when you do that, the numbers in the center are decreasing, which means that you are going to have actually, going to be more stressed to want to play into the center more, because if you ever have more numbers in your personal scoring area than the middle, then you lose all of your numbers. So it's a weird one to explain right off the bat, but the mechanics are so simple, so straightforward. But the beauty of this game comes in its modularity. So the base game just had simple effects for every card. But in this one, each color has 4 different tiles that give it a special ability. Think something like Coup Rebellion or something like that, where you'll pick a tile to represent the color of that game. But this does it so simply because each of these effects is very straightforward. It's either you're drawing a card or flipping a token or removing a card that's already been placed. So they all tweak the game a little bit differently. Now they go from very easy to a little bit bonkers. So one thing could be drawing a card, and one thing could be moving on this map board, and another effect could have you bringing out this entire new deck of cards that didn't even exist in your previous game. And this mismatch and these combinations can create extremely interesting game states, interesting game scenarios, and really tough decisions, but like super impactful decisions in a very short time frame. And I love this. This is like up there with me in like the great filler games. This is one that I've been loving. Wow. I love the artwork. This is, if you have a chance to grab this one, I say grab it now, because right now there's pretty much no buzz on this game. It came out in 2020 and I don't think anybody's talking about it. I know that the original version got several like very, positive and negative reviews for the original game, Capital Lux. A lot of people hated it. A lot of people liked it. But this one has a refined rule set, a new version of the original game rules. So it's refined. And it also has those additional modular expansions, which is amazing. Love it. I can't get enough of this one. This is one that I see myself playing a lot of. Have you ever heard of this one, Dan? Have you played the original?
I've not played it, but I have heard it in the background. I've never done a deep dive, never looked at how this plays. But interesting to hear your comments on it. And you said this is new out, and there's already expansion content out. Is that right?
So this is going to tie into one of our conversations we're going to have later on the episode about Kickstarter exclusives versus no Kickstarter exclusives. It had a Kickstarter back in 2019, and it got kickstarted, delivered in 2020, and it came, if you kickstarted the game, it came with expansions, so like a small card pack, as well as some more modules and like a whole extra deck of cards. So if you kickstarted it, you got the expansions. Porta Games has said that they are going to potentially be releasing those expansions in the future, but they're not sure. So once again, it's based on the demand of people. So I've actually hunted down one of the expansions. I'm looking at another, but I need some more clarification because I'm not sure exactly what is Kickstarter exclusive, what's included in the expansion. So I've reached out to a Porta and hopefully I get some clarification. So, but the core game by itself is really all you need. I don't think you actually need the expansions to enjoy this because the design is so straightforward and so tight in what it does. I think it's a great game.
Okay. And you think that's going to stand up more long term as well? Do you think there's enough content in the box to...
I really do think so. I think that even just the base game, like the original core 4 that they carry over from the original Capital Lux, those 4 on itself are extremely solid. And the fact that there's additional replayability it's incredible. I really think this game is going to be one that stays there a long time. Who knows? Maybe in a year or two, I'll be proven wrong. But for right now, my opinion is very high on this one. It's simple mechanisms, but done so well. It's up there. It's amazing. You gotta give this one a try.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that one because it sounds it sounds pretty cool. Okay, let's move on then to the second game I've been playing. The second game is Kokopelli, which is the latest release by Queen Games and Stefan Feld. I know we spoke about this very briefly on a previous episode about kind of the general rumblings about it. And I have to say, I agree with those kind of thoughts that this does not feel like a Stefan Feld game. You're really out there, weird themes with a bunch of mechanisms shoved together, getting points in different ways. This one is almost entirely card driven. Anything that's not a card in this game is pretty much superfluous. And it's actually a real family-friendly style game again. It's very simple mechanically, where you just have a hand of cards. You're either drawing a new one, you're starting a ceremony, which is by playing them on one of your spots on your player board. Or you're adding cards to those ceremonies, because as soon as you play a 4th card of a type, then you score some victory points. But the cool thing about this game is that when you start one of these ceremonies, you are going to have a power for the duration where that ceremony is on your player board. And those powers are pretty subtle in their own kind of individual rights, and such as, when you draw a card, you get to draw another card, or you get to draw a card off somebody else's discard pile, or when you complete a ceremony, you get a bonus point, or when you play a card on another player's board, you get a bonus point. And all these little things are, they're simple. As I said, they're simple in their own regard, but once you start meshing them together and you kind of start generating points a lot quicker than your opponents do, that is what's going to separate the winner from the loser. So it's all about squeezing every single point you can as often as you can. And I love the variability of this game, because the base game alone, I think it comes with 16 different ceremonies, and you only use 10 from game to game. So that's going to be different in itself. And they all work in different ways. They all synergize with each other in different ways. But also, if you backed it on Kickstarter, you got an expansion as well, which is just more ceremonies. So there's no additional rules. There's no rules bloat whatsoever, and it's just more content and more options to choose from. And I think this is probably one of the best examples of a clean kind of system where you can easily add new content into it just by adding more ceremonies. And I've played this a few times now. It's gone down really well, and it's just a real kind of change of pace for a Stefan Feld game. And I'm just enjoying it. It's really enjoyable. Some nice little combos, nice little powers, and some pretty interesting player interaction as well, as you can actually complete ceremonies on other players' boards to which is not only going to get you points, but going to stop them getting the powers that they had there. So yeah, definitely recommend checking this one out if you like your card-driven games with just a little dash of the Feld magic. So yeah, that's Kokopelli.
This looks great. Yeah, this is one that I missed the Kickstarter on, but it looks like a blast. So I watched your review of it, and you seem very thrilled with it. So one, I definitely want to give it a try. Yeah, I love it. And I love the kind of the subtle expansions like that, kind of like the more stuff expansions, the new combinations they can involve. It reminds me of Capital Oaks, honestly, with the easy switching of things. So that's super cool. This is a great pick. Awesome, Dan. Awesome. Cool. So my game here, the next one I want to talk about is a game that we actually brought up during our top 10 list over on your channel. So this was our top 10 games that we want to give a try. Now, please go check out that channel. It's over on Dan's channel over at Chairman of the Board. So make sure you're subscribed. Go check out that channel there and see that video, because we talked about this game called Inish. So Inish is a game where we play as these Celtic clans, and you're trying to fulfill one of the 3 win conditions through clever card drafting and strategic play. So the way this works is you either are trying to be in 6 areas on this very large map. You are trying to be in control of 6 of your opponent's clan members, be chieftain of them. The last thing that you have to do is be in spaces where there are 6 sanctuaries. So the game is kind of set up on this really interesting map. So I'll pull up some pictures here for you. But the whole thing is everything as you play is going to grow. So the more I've played this game, the more I realize that this game is all about escalation and kind of playing on your opportunistic cards. So I've had some really mixed feelings about this game as a whole. For me, it sits at about an 8 out of 10. It's extremely different. It's extremely unique. It's very interesting. I was really worried that it was going to kind of occupy the same space as something like Blood Rage or Rising Sun, but this is something completely different. This game plays in like an hour or less, very fast, very quick to play, very tactical while still being strategic while you're drafting cards and kind of setting up dominoes and then hoping those dominoes play out. It has a very interesting mechanism where you're going to be passing and you have to kind of determine when you're going to be playing these cards. But the thing that I think is kind of putting it down a little bit for me are these cards, and these are the epic tale cards. So as you play the game, you're going to be gathering epic tale cards in your hand, and these cards, there's like a deck of maybe 80 of them, something like that. So many of them, especially if you add an expansion, there's a whole bunch, and these are going to give some insane power, and sometimes they don't have a really insane power, and it can really be dependent on the situations that arise. Now, with that being said, sometimes you're going to have to construct your hand when you're drafting around these epic tale cards you get. That's kind of what you're supposed to do. But other times you may draw one that's extremely good for the situation you happen to be in right now, and that could be game breaking. And that's kind of the experience that we've had with this game. Have you felt this at all, Dan, when you've played? Have you played this?
I've got it. I haven't played it yet. You beat me to it. So it's on my shelf. Yeah, it's on my shelf, ready to be played. Just finding the time to do it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I would recommend you play this game don't play the 5-player variant. I would not recommend it. It honestly takes a little bit longer than it should, and it's a little more chaotic, and the drafting adds a whole bunch of extra cards as well. So I would not recommend the 5-player variant. But 4 and 3 in this game, I think, are super, super good. So I would strongly recommend that player count. But this one is really interesting. I love the mechanisms that are involved. And once again, it's a game about escalation, because as you play, everyone is going to be inching closer and closer to the win conditions, because movement, combat, everything in here is very it reminds me of Rising Sun a little bit, with the kind of limited actions where on your turn you get to do one thing really, and if you have that, somebody else isn't going to be able to do it as efficiently as you, if that makes any sense. But the way that the win conditions kind of intertwine with each other make for very interesting choices and decisions. So there's opportunities where you can have clashes, which means you attack, and you actually can just opt to not attack, which is actually extremely viable for win conditions. Because once again, it could be a good thing to be in an area to be in with a sanctuary, but it also, it might be good to take out that person because, you don't want them to be in the sanctuary, but you want them to be in your area so that you can rule over them and fulfill your other win condition. It's so interesting, but having a lot of fun with Inish, and it's one that I do ask to play because it's fun. I enjoy playing it, but definitely not as strong as some of the other kind of area control games that I have experienced. So I'm very much looking forward to Ankh later to kind of see what's next in these styles of games. So that's my thoughts on Inish, and yeah, I hope you try it soon, and I really am excited to hear your thoughts on it, Dan.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time, so yeah, it'll be interesting to maybe talk about it on a future episode and see if my thoughts are the same. But yeah, obviously it's a game that we were both interested in playing. 8 out of 10, very more than respectable, so we shall see.
Sweet. Okay. What's next on your list of played games, Dan?
So the next game I'm going to talk about is definitely the biggest game, the most epic in scope. This is Anno 1800, which is the latest release by Martin Wallace, who is known for his industrious economic style games. And this one is in that vein or style of game. And this one, there's a lot going on here. However, I'm quite impressed about how the choices are boiled down into quite a few simple actions, so you're not overwhelmed with things you can actually do. It's just the kind of fallout of the actions that is where the decision space comes in. And this is a game about trying to suit the needs, or trying to please the different population in your little colony, I suppose, or your different town. And you have a bunch of these cards, and they all need different things. And it has a bit of a strange pacing, as the game actually ends once a person has kind of filled the needs of all their people. However, as you're going about trying to fill these needs, you are inevitably going to draw more cards. So it's pretty much a game where that often feels like you're getting nowhere, because you're keep trying to please these people, you're getting more and more cards, and it feels like you're really going nowhere and just going around in circles. But eventually you'll get on top of that, and you'll start to create a bit of an engine, or a bit of an economy where you can get everything done. But the thing I really took away from this game is almost the tech tree aspect of this. As different members of your colony need kind of quite sophisticated goods. For example, they might need these penny farthing bicycles. And in order to do that, you're going to need to not only have the steel, but you're probably going to need the rubber for the wheels. You're going to need an engineer who's going to put it together. And in order to get the engineer, you're going to need to upgrade someone else. And it really is about following these pathways and these tech trees to get those more niche needs fulfilled. And at the same time, you're going to find yourself running out of space on your individual player board. So you're going to have to build boats and go explore new lands to get more space. And if you find yourself not being able to manufacture a certain type of good, you can actually spend these trade tokens in order to leech off the other players to get their goods. And they get compensated by getting some gold for that, which is a nice kind of efficiency tool to use, because you can actually spend gold to unexhaust their workers so they can start generating more goods. It's a lot to explain in a minute clip like this, but I was really impressed. I'm so just massively impressed with those tech trees. There's a lot of things going on there. You can see from the main board all the different industries you can do. There's just a ton of them. So the setup's a bit fiddly. There's quite a lot to lay out, but the way they kind of string together as one thing leads to another is actually really fascinating. Actually, pretty logical as well, because if you need ships, you're going to need the wood, you're going to need the sails, you're probably going to need a cannon in order to go to some dangerous lands and stuff. So yeah, it all does come together quite logically, and the rule set is pretty simple and it's not a difficult game to explain, but there is certainly some scope for frustration if you've not got it in your head that you're going to be sometimes feel like you're fighting a losing battle to get all these cards fulfilled. But I'm really impressed. I'm really excited to try it some more. I think there's potential for some variant on this to make the game end condition a bit different, because I think it's going to be quite polarizing. But initial impressions certainly positive for Anno 1800.
Excellent. So this is one that I've looked at a lot recently. I've had nothing but positives from this game. A lot of people gravitating towards playing this, asking to play this. It looks really, really, really good. I like Martin Wallace in general. We got Indra joining us. Hey, Indra. Good to have you this morning. But this one is, it's very fascinating to me. So I'm glad that you have positive reception on it. Now, my question for you, though, on this one in particular is, how does it compare to things like Brass?
Okay.
I think that comparison is going to come up, right? Like, I think that's
I suppose naturally it will. I mean, it's got a different feel to Brass. I mean, obviously Brass is all about the route building. Mm-hmm. This one doesn't have any of that. It's all about the production chains and stuff. So although I suppose the vibe is the same, the actual gameplay is very different. And I suppose comparing things to Brass is going to be, difficult, because Brass is one of the best games ever made. I don't think this is as good as Brass, but that's not a bad thing. This is still an excellent game. But yeah, I think other than the feel and vibe of the game, it's going to be very difficult to compare to Brass, in my opinion. Same kind of length, I suppose. Same industry feel, but mechanisms poles apart, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, like you described here, it looks like you're kind of working on your own stuff, but you can also use your other things. I like that mechanic of unexhausting your opponent's workers. That seems really interesting. It seems like a bad thing in a lot of games, but the ability to kind of give your opponents opportunities to better your own position seems really cool.
Yeah. So all the kind of interaction, and that's pretty much the scope of the interaction, but it's a positive style of interaction where you're not hurting them, but they are going to benefit, because you can spend your whole turn basically putting everything back or unexhausting everything, which is going to be your entire turn. Whereas if you have more gold, which is acquired by trading, then they're not going to have to waste that whole turn. They can just spend the gold and unexhaust things. So it's a very small gain they get, but it's a game worth having. So it's interesting. A very, very delicately balanced kind of interaction. Quite fascinating.
Sounds really cool. I'm excited to give that one a try. We'll see when it shows up here. So very, very excited. I don't think it's on its stateside yet, so we'll see. Okay. I'm excited. Excellent. Yeah, so the last game that I want to talk about today is Aquatica. So Aquatica came out maybe 2 years ago at Essen. It had an expansion recently come out, Cold Waters, that actually has changed the game drastically, and it's my preferred way to play this game. So Aquatica is a fantastic game where you're going to be taking cards into your hand. You're kind of doing that hand building, and as you can see in games like Concordia or Margraves of Valeria, but this is a little bit different, where those cards are also not tied to scoring. And I think that's huge. It allows you to kind of do some engine building while not focusing on the scoring attached to that engine building. And that's something I really appreciate. So you're building your own hand of cards, playing stuff out, but the core mechanic in this game outside of that hand building is these location cards. So the boards in this game are so interesting. So you can see it's got lots of beautiful components, but let's just take a look at one of these boards. So the way it works is you're going to be taking in these location cards and you're going to be sliding them into your own personal player board. You can see that here. So they are going to be kind of partially covering locations. Now, first off, this is a sleever's nightmare because you're not going to find sleeves that fit into the board. So I've had some trouble with that. So yeah, that sucks. So this is a game that can't get sleeved, which is really unfortunate. I even tried too. didn't work. But these cards are going to be sliding up in order to activate special abilities. And that's so cool. I love this kind of interesting, very small, not super complicated, but super fun puzzle of sliding the cards up. You have these mantas that serve as like floating resources. There's no resource tokens in this game. It's all kind of like floating, which is really nice. And it's a very quick paced game, a lot of fun. Now, if you are going to get Aquatica, I recommend that you do get the Cold Waters expansion. The reason I recommend this is because it changes the end game conditions and it changes the scoring. So this is the base game here. The scoring in the base game has you doing these 4 kind of objectives. And so if you reach those objectives, you place one of your player color mantas on top, and that's going to give you extra points at the end. And the game ends when somebody has all 4 of those. And that can be super quick. We played this 5 times. And the first 2 times we played just the base game, and the game was over on a single turn because somebody was able to complete all 4 at the same time. Like they were able to kind of like get cards in a way where they just kind of fulfilled all the conditions. And if that's how you win and how you get points, that's kind of what you're preparing for, right? So the game would end extremely quickly, and you really didn't get a chance to actually enjoy the game because it was all about kind of min-maxing to reach those achievements. Now, the Cold Waters actually comes with a board that completely covers that section because clearly other people didn't like this either. It completely removes the objective system and changes it to these cards that are going to have different abilities that you can unlock during the game or different scoring conditions you'll unlock for the end of the game. And then the way the game ends is if one of the decks of cards runs out. So that is really cool. I really like this new change. It has a lot of new powers and abilities that you can use during the game, and it's just a lot of fun. So I recommend that if you get this game, play Cold Waters, and it's a good one. This is a fun game. I'm enjoying Aquatica. I love the component quality. I love the mantas. I love the different ship cards. I love the combos that you can create here. And I love being able to kind of evaluate when the best time to use certain abilities is. So having a blast with this one. That's Aquatica. Dan, what are your opinions on this one? Have you heard of this one? Have you played it?
Yeah, so this one is actually on my radar and on my kind of short list of things to pick up. I might look at doing it because there's an expo in the UK in a few weeks' time, so I might look at picking it up there. Quite interesting to see that it does play in 30 to 60 minutes. Is that the case in reality?
That is the case in reality.
Yeah.
It's a very quick game. So remember, it's just you play a card, you do the action on the card, and you're going to be familiar with all your cards. You only have like 5 at the beginning, so it's really, really fast. And your combos are kind of something like, like Yu-Gi-Oh or something where you're triggering a bunch of stuff. It's super fun, super fast, super quick, really good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, interesting. And is the expansion kind of affordable, or is it the same price as the base game? I've not quite looked into prices and stuff.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'd assume, but I'm sorry. We actually talked about this last time. Generally, with games with expansions, I just buy them. I don't normally look at price tags on that stuff. So that's when tax season comes around. That's when I'll look at those price tags. I think it's cheaper. No, I think maybe like it's on sale pretty constantly for like $24. I think is what we got it for.
Okay.
Or something. That's my guesstimate, but I think the base game's about 50. So this is American dollars.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, so I think it's affordable. I definitely don't think it's more expensive than the base game.
Cool. I'll have a look.
Yeah, I recommend you check it out. It's a good one. Cool. So that's our what we've been playing section. Now we're going to go to Dan's favorite section and the one he always contributes so much to. We're going to go into crowdfunding picks. So Dan, what is your crowdfunding pick for this week?
Well, I think it's a bit of a point now. You don't even need to come to me. I've not backed anything this time either. Hopefully there's something coming soon. I'm sure there will be. But yeah, nothing for me with this episode. But I know there's something you want to talk about.
Yes. So the game that I want to talk about is actually not available right now on Kickstarter. It is actually on GameFound, and this is actually a preview page. So the actual campaign is going to be launching on the 20th, so in 3 days from the recording of this video. And this is Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness, Apocalypse. So this is the expansion and reprint for the base game Chronicles of Drunagor, which is a dungeon crawling board game that I've been having a lot of fun with. So it's a great solo and cooperative dungeon crawling style game that uses this clever action cube system in order to activate abilities and powers, and it has a giant campaign that you're going to be going through. Now, the reason I want to bring your attention to this is because this has not only it has a notify me bonus. So like if you sign up for the reminder of when this page launches, you're going to get a free miniature as well as like a free mini expansion. But if you're also backing in the first 48 hours, you get additional promo content. I think it's in the form of like a golden initiative marker and some other things. So if you have any interest in this one, just make sure you sign up for that initial kind of remind me message. That way you ensure that you get that free stuff if you actually have any ideas to jump on it. Now, the game itself is wonderful. So this is one that I really liked, and I actually put a lot of content out on the Side Game LLC channel about it. And we are lucky enough to actually be featured on the page. So we had our testimonials put on here. Now, I'm not getting paid at all by Creative Game Studios. I'm not receiving anything for this, but I do think this game is great. I think it's a lot of fun. The character customization in this and the action system is that fun. I think it's worth looking into. So big fan of Chronicles of Drunagor, and this expansion offers a couple of things. The first thing that it offers are extreme, awesome new campaigns. You can get all of the base stuff from the original Kickstarter, so that way you don't have to worry about missing any of the exclusives, which is really nice. And the last thing that it adds is it's going to be changing a lot of rules and issues that people had with the game. So it's going to streamline some of the kind of like the danger rules in the game, as well as implement more narrative into the game. And the last thing that I really love that it's adding is narrative to everything. So that's super cool. You're going to have somebody that's going to read the audio for you, which is great because there's a lot of reading in this one. It reminds me a lot of Middara with a lot of just like the blocks of text. So any big game like this with narration, I think is huge. So any comments on this one, Dan?
No, just the miniatures look amazing. These so good.
These are like some of the best miniatures I've seen in a while. And the new content here, the Apocalypse stuff, these miniatures, we'll just look at the top here, like they're gigantic. This is 140 millimeters. That's huge. Like that's something that's like, probably this big. That's going to be about as big as your head. That's insane. These things are gigantic. And these are like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So they're going to be tromping around on your table. Oh, it's going to be so cool. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. We have a Light Dog 20XX. He says he still hasn't played it yet. This is actually my friend Fun from here in Colorado Springs. Dude, you got to jump in this one. It's super good. You're going to love it. If you want to learn how to play it, hook me up, man. I'll let you know. This is a great one, though. I do recommend that if you're even interested in it, just make sure you sign up for that notification because you do get that free stuff. So, I mean, and if you decide not to back it, not a big deal, right? Nothing lost. So that's it for our crowdfunding section. Now we're going to jump into news items, and Dan, I'll have you take the lead on this one. What are we talking about this time?
Okay, so just a couple of things that have caught my attention. A couple of expansions coming out that I've only just found out about. So first of which is going to be a new expansion called Time of Seth. And this is for Tekhenu, which is one of my favorite dice drafting games of the last couple of years, a Daniele Tascini game. I'm not entirely sure what this expansion consists of. I don't think a tremendous amount has been announced yet. But, always more content for favorite games is a good thing. And I always find that these kind of Tascini expansions generally merge quite well and are always, welcome additions. So yeah, I don't know tremendous about. I think there's another sideboard for the game where you're kind of invading different lands or something. I don't know exactly, but probably more stuff you'd come to expect with a game like this. But still, more content for an excellent game.
Yep. The other thing that it looks like it adds is a advanced 2-player mode because apparently the 2-player was really lacking. So, yep, it's got soldiers, a sideboard, and then that 2-player mode. But I totally agree with you. I love Tekhenu. I think that's one of the best dice drafting games to come out in a while. So I totally agree with you there. Yeah, what else came out on your radar, Dan?
Okay, so this is a game I think we both enjoyed this one. This is the second expansion that's been announced for Res Arcana. Which is a nice little kind of card-driven tableau building style game as you're racing to get to a number of points. And this is called Perlae Imperii. Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. But I think this one adds, obviously more content. I think it adds a new resource, being pearls. And it's essentially, I guess, more paths to victory, more cards, and yeah, just another route to take. And I think it's more kind of set under the sea. So it was I like that kind of theme. And yeah, looks cool.
Yeah, this one looks great, and more stuff for Res Arcana is always welcome. The last expansion added all those demons. That was a lot of fun. It looks like this one, like you said, is going to incorporate a new resource, which I think will be great. So super excited for this one. Can't wait to try it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems to be unanimously popular, Res Arcana, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited for that expansion.
Totally agree. Now, the piece of news that I wanted to cover today is pretty much like a big dump of news. So, last week, or I think it was actually 2 weeks ago, the Summer Spectacular for Dice Tower showed up, and they actually had a gigantic mega announcement video. So, in this video, they had all sorts of publishers that came in. So, please go ahead and check out that video. Go support the Dice Tower. They do a great job. They do great things with the hobby, so do go check them out. But in this mega announcement video, holy cow, they had so much stuff that I had no idea was going to happen, and it was a lot of like firsts, like holy cow. Now I'm not going to show you the video, but we're just going to quickly go over some highlights down here. The first things is from the things that I really want to talk about are, first up, let me see if I can find it. Horrible Guild has Queen's Dilemma, and I think that's super exciting for anybody who enjoyed that legacy game. Did you ever play King's Dilemma, Dan?
No, I haven't, but it's one that I kind of want to try before I buy, really. But love the idea of it. I like that kind of Game of Thronesy style thing. I love it. So yeah, I want to try it, but I've heard mixed things about the game itself, and it's maybe a bit more player driven, having like, you know, the kind of fun is put on the players a bit more than the game mechanisms themselves, which gives me a bit of makes me a little bit apprehensive about trying it.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely completely story driven, essentially. Now, the other person they had on was Skybound Games, and they talked about their new Tidal Blades releases. So they're going to be doing a new Kickstarter for like the part 2 in the Tidal Blades universe, as well as an RPG. So that's super exciting. Tidal Blades is a game that we really enjoy here at Side Game. Fun in the comments there. He also really enjoys that one of his favorites. So that's pretty awesome. That's Light Dog 20XX. And then another big game that they talked about was Dune Imperium, the new expansion for that by Direwolf Digital. So it's, if I remember correctly, it's the Rise of Ix. So let's see if we can get some images of that. But have you been following that at all? Are you a fan of Dune Imperium, the original?
No, I've not played it. To be honest, I've not ever. I don't know anything about the IP of Dune. To be honest, I've got the book, but I've not read it yet. And yeah, I've not played Imperium. I know it's kind of came out the same time as Arnak, or Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I more lean towards that one than this one because, again, I don't know anything about the IP, but I know it's been a big hit, and this expansion is certainly being talked about at the moment.
Yes, it's super high on the hotness. Now, I have not read any of the Dune material. I have not watched any of the movies, but I've kind of learned about the universe through playing the games. So the original Dune board game and this one. And I love this world. I think it's super interesting, super fun. And this game is pretty great. I think I actually prefer this one a little bit more than Lost Ruins of Arnak, in my personal opinion. I love the player interaction in it. I think that's huge. I do prefer Arnak for solo play, but this one is amazing for multiplayer. But this new expansion adds new ships, new ways to spend resources, new factions. It's going to be great. So super excited for that one. And the last couple things that were added, I won't go into them here, but they did talk about some things that we already mentioned back on our previous list, the bonfire expansion and some other things. So super excited for all of these things coming up. So that's the news section here. The next part we're going to talk about is the card and component appreciation. Dan, what are we talking about?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a game by Alexander Pfister, a component for one of his games, at least. This is from Cloudage, which didn't blow up quite to the degree as Great Western Trail or Maracaibo did, but still a nice Pfister game nonetheless. I'm talking about the sleeves for this game, or in particular, there's a mechanism where you are supposed to be kind of scouting for resources, but the idea is that we're in these kind of airships looking down at the landscape and having to find out what this landscape has to offer in terms of resources. But as you can see from the video here, these cards, which determines the resources, are going to go into these sleeves, which means that on that sleeve there's going to be a portion of it covered over with clouds, meaning that you can't see through them. And from that kind of image, you're going to have to try and make an educated guess about what's going to be the most rich source there. So, for example, there you might think, the biggest area is all these kind of warehouses. So therefore, I'm going to generate, this resource more often. Or there's only a tiny bit of water on that landscape, so it's probably not going to be a good idea to go hunt for water there. But that's not always the case, because you've got imperfect information there. For all I know, behind that cloud there could be a massive ocean there, and there could be loads of water there. But it's just a nice little thematic twist, and I think it's just really cool and it works well. So a nice little functional component there that does the job really well.
So I really like this component. This is actually from our channel. This is the top 20 board game components, and this made my number 20. I think it's that cool. And exactly like you described, Alexander Pfister has found another way to make push your luck different and interesting. And that's really cool. I really like this mechanism, and I like that it really fits in with the theme. The cloud is obstructing, and I like that there are multiple clouds that you could pick from. I think this is an amazing pick, Dan. This is awesome. Have you seen any other games employ something like this?
Never have I seen another game that uses this. There might be something out there, and maybe something is going to steal it going forward. But yeah, I love it when just something simple like that is just executed. That's what it does really well. So yeah, I like that one.
Love it. So now let's go ahead and jump to my card/component appreciation, and this is going to be from the game Middara. So Middara is this awesome dungeon crawling style board game where it takes people. So basically, a giant portal is opened up in Seattle, and people have been jumping from our world to this fantasy world, and they bring their own tastes and styles when they do that. And some of those styles are just t-shirts, like casual things that you might just wear normally. And that's my favorite things so far actually in this game are some of the items. And the one item in particular I want to talk about is the Occult t-shirt. So this t-shirt here, it's very cheap. It's only about $15. It's one of the first items that you can purchase, but it does so much, and I love how thematic and interesting it is. So first off, on the left side here, it's a t-shirt. So you're getting no armor, you're getting no health, you're literally wearing cloth, but because you're not wearing anything heavy, you get extra movement. And I think that's super cool. So you're able to move more, and moving is actually kind of hard to do because you only can potentially move once per turn, and it costs you additional effort to move maybe 2 extra spaces every turn. So I like that right off the bat, you're getting that extra bonus. Now, the other cool thing is, once again, it's a really light t-shirt. So as a free action, you could exhaust it, just put it sideways. So once per turn, you get a free dodge. Love it. So right off the bat, you're doing all this, you're doing all this fun stuff. You're able to do a lot of the game, a lot of things that you normally wouldn't be able to, but you're risking not having that additional protection. And the last thing is, because you're so nimble in the t-shirt, if you dodge successfully, you get to counter for free and unexhaust the card. So it's so awesome. You can get so much free stuff off of this. And if you miss on the initial dodge, then at the start of your next turn, it's going to unexhaust. So you can just continue being nimble. It is so cool. I love how this works. And it's just a lot of fun. It's that high risk, high reward, and it's perfect for a game like this where it's cooperative play. So you're kind of hoping to get those really cool, fun moments. And I think this really plays into it. So I love it. I love the customization in this game, and I love that you could put on a t-shirt and go out into battle. I think that's just so funny and so thematic. It's great. Any interest in this one? Have you seen this game? Do you know anything about Middara, Dan?
I don't know anything about it other than what you've mentioned already. Yeah, but yeah, a cool little t-shirt there. But yeah, thematic, as you said, thematic, more nimble, but no protection whatsoever. So yeah, I like it.
It's great. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. I've been having a lot of fun with Middara, and just little thematic touches like this make this world a little bit more believable and more livable, in my opinion. So that's our card and component appreciation. Now we move on to this or that. And this is what we were alluding to earlier about our Kickstarter exclusives. Today's topic is actually going to be Kickstarter exclusives or not. Do we want to actually have these in the hobby? Yes or no? Are they good or bad? Right off the bat, Dan, initial impressions. What do you think? Yes or no? Are these good things to have?
Well, initial impressions are yes. I mean, I like getting the little additional bits and bobs. I mean, they're never, not normally extremely, necessary, I suppose, but it's just an extra incentive to actually back the game in the first place, other than just waiting for retail and not getting it. And I just like it as an additional incentive. And I've got some quite nice stuff over the years as Kickstarter exclusives, and it's all part of the fun for me, isn't it? It's all part of the appeal of Kickstarter, and without it, everything might as well just go to retail. And yeah, so yeah, I'm all for it, really. I'm all for it.
Gotcha. Well, for me, initially, I'm actually not for it. So this is one that I'm not a big fan of because a lot of the times I hear about games late. And that means that I'm going to have a lot of trouble finding all the content. And just like we talked about with Capital X2 Generations, I'm having a really hard time finding additional content expansions that are not available to me otherwhere else. Now, it feels real good when you get a Kickstarter and you're able to afford it and get all the exclusive stuff and jump in on it. And it feels great when it finally gets to you. But if you miss it and that's the only opportunity, especially with some smaller games, that sucks because you're never going to find that. Or maybe you're going to be searching forever. Or as you can see here, this is the Game Steward. It's a popular website in the United States where you can buy Kickstarter goods secondhand. Not secondhand, but for a premium, essentially. And it's a very common practice here for people to buy Kickstarter goods and sell them on the aftermarket for extremely high prices. So I'm not a big fan of the inflated stuff, but I do agree with you where I think that it's really awesome that there is additional content being given to a game that you like. But for me, I find it super frustrating to have to go and look and find this stuff because, God, it's annoying. But I can definitely see the positives. Do you have any negatives potentially that could come from this on your end?
I completely agree with what you're saying, but more of a personal thing. I'm not such a completionist. I'm not too bothered if I don't get it. So, if I was to miss out on something and not get the exclusives, that's not going to stress me out too much. Whereas I know I'm probably in the minority there. A lot of people do like to have everything, and if they can't get everything, then they're going to find that quite distressing. Whereas, again, I'm not too bothered. I just see it as a little welcome addition. But yeah, I completely see your side of the story, and it's more of a personal thing. But I don't like the way that some companies abuse that. As you say, like get it now or you're never going to get it forever. That kind of FOMO comes in, and it can kind of be used as a bit of manipulation, and maybe sometimes even later down the line it is available and people feel like they've been suckered in. But
so I kind of want to talk about that, actually, Dan, and what you were just saying there, where sometimes it becomes available down the line. So recently, Zombicide here. Now, Zombicide is a CMON game that offers incredible amounts of content with those stretch goals. And they're not kidding. Like, you get so much stuff with this. We just had this one recently delivered in the last couple months. And you are getting, like, so many stretch goals. So we'll just go to the bottom here and you will just see, you'll get like stretch goal after stretch goal after stretch goal. All of these are Kickstarter exclusive. They're all included with this edition. And once again, this is the only time you can get them. However, that's not the case. Recently, Miniature Market has just put out all of the Kickstarter exclusive stuff by CMON from like maybe 5 years ago, something like that. All of Zombicide Black Plague, all of the Hate stuff, all of the Rum and Bones, all of these Kickstarter projects have all gone on there with every bit of Kickstarter exclusive content. So not only is it like feeding into that FOMO and like you were saying here, but it's not true and it's really frustrating because you're kind of like given that promise. And is that something that you feel is fair? And what are your opinions on that?
I think it's slightly immoral. However, I suppose from their point of view, they've kind of used time as a bit of a softener for it. Mm-hmm. I've had 5 years with this content, you haven't, kind of thing. But ultimately, they've lied, haven't they? So I don't know. I'm not going to get. I'm not too hung up on it, but I completely understand why people would be.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do really like about Kickstarter exclusive content is the fact that it like doubles the amount of content in a game. It makes it so you just have that much more variability, that many more interesting things. Like, for example, you were talking about Kokopelli earlier that came with just additional gold tiles as part of the Kickstarter thing. And that's amazing. I love that stuff. That's so cool. That really does add to the gameplay. I love it. I also love Deluxification Kickstarter upgrades. Like, for example, Rising Sun and Blood Rage had some really cool tokens and components if you got those. So I really like that stuff because that extremely quality feeling game is really, really nice. But I would prefer it to be available at retail, like Oath, for example. Oath's production was incredible, but none of it was Kickstarter exclusive. It was much cheaper on Kickstarter, which is great, but you could get it still readily available afterwards. And I think that's my favorite way to do things because it ensures that people are able to play your game in like all of its glory. So I really like that. Yeah. Any other final thoughts before we close this one out? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, just as you were saying, really, it seems like, at least from my perception, a lot more companies are doing what you're saying, I find more often people are saying, like, here's the game, here's what you're getting, that's it. They don't say, here's this, and this, all this extra stuff. You're just backing it at face value. This is what you're going to get. You're going to get it at a slightly better value, and that's it. So I like that as well. It keeps it nice and simple. But either way, I'm not going to stop backing stuff on Kickstarter if it appeals to me. And I don't think companies are going to stop doing it either.
And unfortunately, that's kind of the world we live in, right? Where we have to kind of we got to roll with the punches. And I'm totally on the same side as you. As I just said about Chronicles of Drunagor, I signed up for the early pledge so I could get that extra Kickstarter exclusive stuff. It's going to happen, right? I do want that awesome stuff. And luckily, I do know about these, and I can tell other people about these awesome things that are coming out. Now, last week, we actually had a question for the viewers, and we had a poll posted to Dan's channel. Do you have that with you by chance?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay. So our question to the audience was, do you prefer Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective or Chronicles of Crime? So 2 crime-solving cases here. Which one do you prefer? So Dan, what are the results?
Okay, so when we talked about this last week, we kind of took a side each. I went for Chronicles of Crime. Mackenzie went for Sherlock Holmes. And it was close again, but the winner was Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, 55% to 45%. So really close, right until the wire. And I think Mackenzie's starting to take off and win this or that episode. So yeah, but I like both of these games and would have been happy with any result.
Totally agree. So this time I will put the poll on my channel because we did recently reach that 1K. So I'm actually able to do that now. Super exciting. So that's really cool. But yes, very excited. Light Dog, he says that he hasn't played any of those yet. So I really do recommend you give those 2 a try. They are some great detective style games. I think you really can't go wrong with either. That's just our preference, right? So, but those 2 are very solid games. They're loved for a good reason. So strongly recommend either of them. I think they're solid games. Any other comments to add on this one, Dan?
No, said, yeah, great games. One slightly more technological as you use an app. One isn't, but still, great at what they do.
Exactly. All right, that ends our this or that section, and now we move into mechanism appreciation. So mechanism appreciation is a section where we're going to talk about not specific cards, but mechanics in board games that we love. Dan, I'm going to have you start this one off. What are we talking about first?
Okay, so the mechanism I'm going to talk about this episode is actually from a game that I'm so on, a mediocre on. I'm not a massive fan of it, but I don't dislike it either. This is from a game called Law of Xidit. Now, this is quite an infamous game in the UK because it's extremely cheap. You can get this for about £10 in a high street shop called The Works. I don't know if this is the same in America where it's very cheap, but it's actually quite a good game. This is a pick up and deliver kind of action programming game as you're traveling around the map, collecting all these different fantasy characters and going to slay these monsters. But that's all fine. That's all perfectly pleasant. But the thing I really love about this game is the actual final scoring mechanism, as you have these kind of 3 different criteria based on 3 different parts of the game, one of which is being to erect these towers, one is to kind of contribute these treasure tokens to these different areas on the board, and one is simply to get victory points. And these are randomly allocated on these 3 different spots, which at the end of the game are going to be resolved one by one. And the first 2 of those criteria are going to be based on the fact that if you are the player with the fewest or who's doing the worst in that category, you're going to be eliminated. And then that player's going to be out of the game. And the next player, then it's going to go to the next phase. And then the worst person in that category is going to get eliminated. And then whoever's remaining is going to be the winner in the final category. But what this means is that the only thing you have to focus on winning is the actual main category, but you've got to make sure that you're not last in the other 2. So you can just scrape through, and as long as you're not last, that's great. And even if one person is going to absolutely smash the final category to get, to win the game, if they're the bottom of the other 2, they're going to get eliminated anyway. And it's just a really cool mechanism that actually forces you to diversify, but not diversify too much, just to scrape through and hope that somebody else is just a little bit worse than you, and ultimately go for glory that way. Really fascinating, and I'd love to see this be used in a different game.
That's a great mechanism. So that reminds me of something like High Society or QE, where there's only that single threshold that you're trying to, you just don't have the least money. But this adds that additional layer. So now you
Yeah.
have three things you're focusing on. That's super cool. I really like this. But you said this game is just take it or leave it. Why is it so cheap?
I have no idea why this is so cheap. Maybe they supply and demand. Maybe they might have made thousands and thousands and thousands of these. But the production is actually quite good. It's set in the Seasons universe. It's very nice production. Looks good. Quite accessible. Some solid mechanisms. One of the best actual programming games that I've played, to be honest. So I rate this, 6.5, 7 out of 10. But that one mechanism is great. It just kind of takes it apart from a lot of games out there and just adds that extra bit of spiciness to the final scoring.
Very cool. Great choice, Dan. Now, the mechanism I want to talk about is kind of a general mechanism that is seen in many games, but it's one I really enjoy. And this is called the two halves. So this is when a game presents itself as having two distinct halves of the game. So the two examples that I kind of want to showcase in this are For Sale and Biblios. So for example, in For Sale here, amazing filler game, this one has one half of the game where you're going to be buying properties through a open auction. And then the second half of the game, you're going to be using a hidden auction and using those properties to, flip them and eventually get money off of it. So I really love this system, and I love how clearly defined the two arcs in this game are. So this adds a really interesting feel to a game. You're preparing for that shift. You are planning for that shift, and you are kind of biding your time and waiting for appropriate, gameplay in both of those sections. So it not only gives you two different challenges to kind of face, but it also gives you something to plan for and a unique feel to each part of the game. So it gives you an arc to your gameplay. So I love that idea here. While I pull up this Biblio stuff, are there any games that you love that employ this two halves mechanism, Dan?
Well, as soon as you mentioned that two half mechanisms, the two games I thought of were Biblios and For Sale. And those are really kind of synonymous with that mechanism. I'm trying to think of any other game that uses that. I'm sure there's loads out there, but again, those two are so predominant in that mechanism that my mind just instantly goes to those ones.
So the other game that I played recently that has this is actually the new roll and write version of Biblios. This is Biblios, Quill, and Parchment. And this does a really cool job of kind of explaining when that's going to happen. If you look at the board here, it actually tells you when the era starts. So you're going to be accumulating currency in the dice version. They're going to go into this white box here. And when you get to this hexagon up here, that says, okay, now you've collected all this money. Now you're going to start using it to auction and bid. So I really like how some games are making it very visual, and I think For Sale does a great job with having the two distinct colors of cards, and this game in particular does a great job with clearly defining it on your boards when that second half begins. So I think that's really cool, and in this dice game in particular, I really like how in the first half you're getting your money, and your second half you're spending the money. I think that's really nice. So I really like this, and I think that it's a great mechanism, and I'd like to see it in more games. I think it's a very clever, and I think it really makes a game robust because it's it's combining two distinct different activities into one. So love it. Love the two halves mechanism, and I'd love to see more of it.
Yeah. It's also I find it really nice with those games where some of the first game kind of bleeds into the second game. Second half, like with Biblios, you're giving cards to your opponent, you're keeping some for yourself, but some are put on a separate pile, which you need to remember for the second half of the game. And the same with For Sale as well. When you're getting these cards, you got to try to remember who bought what, because if your friend had the 30 cards, you need to remember who had that, so you know when to play the cards you've got. So I like it, although I like the fact that they're so distinct, they're not isolated. You've still got some hooks tied into one another, and makes both halves meaningful. So yeah, great system, and more games should try different things with it.
Totally agree on what you just said about Biblios. That's actually one of my favorite parts is that bid pile kind of serves as your second hand because you can reserve things that are going to come up later. Love it. Love it. And Light Dog here, he's got a comment. One of his favorite mechanisms is he loves pulling the tokens from the Arkham Horror 3rd Edition game. So it's got a token bag where each of the tokens are going to assemble based on the scenario, and they're going to do different things based on the scenario. And when you pull them, they kind of sit out so you can anticipate these different actions that are going to occur as you play. So cool system. I love how it's kind of like predicted randomness. So I think it's a great evolution from the Chaos Bag in the Arkham Horror card game. So great pick there, Light Dog. Sweet. So our next section we're going to talk about is the random game section. Okay, so what do you think, Dan? Game nobody knows about, or game at least somebody knows about?
I am going to go for some really obscure kind of booster pack or exception or something of a popular game.
Okay. I like it. See if we can continue our Pokemon trend, eh? All right,
Yeah, something like that.
Let's do it. So we go to browse random game. I did it right this time. And what do we have today? King's Forge, Game of Ingenuity exclusive craft card. Hey, you were right on the super obscure promo card, at least. Hey, we'll take that. What is King's Forge? Have you heard of this game at all? It seems like it's rated. It has a 7.2.
I can't think of this game. No, I don't know what this game is, to be honest. No.
So let's look at King's Forge, and then we'll come back to this page. So King's Forge, let's see if it's rated. Oh, it's in the top 2,000, so it's a Starling game. This came out in 2014, so this is the same publisher that did Everdell and Archmage. And so, it's actual published game. So nice. That's good. Yeah. As opposed to some of like the handmade ones that we've seen before. So King's Forge itself, 2 to 4 players making items for the king with metal and wood. It looks like it's a game where you're going to be trying to become craftsmen for the scene. A variety of dice represent the materials. Those dice can be used to gather, purchase, roll modifiers. Interesting. So it's a dice management game with lots of strategy built into it. And it looks like you're going to be building lots of different cards in this game. So that thing that we found here is actually a promo for the game. So here is the kind of the gameplay itself. Each of these has a specific cost based on the dice used. Okay, that makes sense. So let's go ahead and take a look at our promo card that we found. So this is, let's see it, King's Forge, Game of Ingenuity exclusive craft card. This one reads, promo card for King's Forge, handed out in the Unpub promo card pack at Unpub number 4 in Dover, Delaware. So I don't think you're going to be able to find this one. Darn Kickstarter exclusives, my man. Yeah, any takeaways for this one?
Yeah, so now I've seen the front cover of this one. I do recognize this game, and it's actually one that I'm quite interested in. So this actually looks quite cool. I like the idea of being a blacksmith and getting all this stuff done. And it's actually from the designer who did quite a popular little filler game called 10-Minute Heist.
Really? Okay.
Which I used to own, actually. So yeah, I would actually be willing to give this one a go, and I think this is definitely the best game that we've come across on our random board game. So
I think millions of children would disagree with you and say they prefer Pokemon over this, but this looks like a fun promo card. I like stuff like this where you have like board games brought into a game as a promo. I think that's fun. You're building the item in the game. That's just neat. They do this with a lot of games. One in particular that I saw recently was in, I think, what was it? I think it was in Lockup, the Role Player Tale. There's like a board game that you can create in there. So that's pretty fun. So I like it. It's a neat little item here. And yeah, the game looks cool. Dice drafting's fun. Using the dice as resources is interesting. Yeah, give it a go. Let me know if you give this one a try.
Yeah, I'll definitely be willing to, yeah.
Sick. Awesome. So that is our random game section here. And now we move on to why is this in your collection? Now, Dan, do you want to be the defendant? Or do you want to be or do you want to be the accuser?
I will be the accuser.
Okay.
But I'm not, again, this is not a critical one. This is actually a game that's somewhat piqued my interest. I've heard some good things about it, but again, not done much research myself. And I'm quite intrigued about how this game works in kind of practicality. It is a game called Sidereal Confluence. Which I know there's been a couple of versions of this one. I know there's been an upgraded version. And I know about this game is that this is kind of described as the heaviest negotiation style game. How kind of portray Sidereal Confluence, and would I like it?
So you really like Chinatown, is that correct? If I remember correctly.
Love Chinatown. Yeah.
So Sidereal Confluence is an extremely fascinating negotiation game. So each of you plays as an alien race, and each alien race is completely different. You're going to have all these powers, but the big thing that it's revolving around are converters. So I'll try to find a picture here for you, but what converters do are they take cubes of one color and they turn them into cubes of another color. But the way the game is created is that your converters are not going to be using the cubes that you actually create. So the game forces you to trade with other players in order to find things that work with your converters. And I think that is super interesting. So this is what a converter looks like. It'll just say something simple like, hey, you need 4 brown cubes, and then you get all of these cubes. Now, the cool thing about this game is you can pretty much trade anything. So you can trade cubes for cubes. You can trade your converters themselves to other players for cubes. You can trade pretty much anything, which is really, really cool. And I think that's the same thing in Chinatown, yes, where you pretty much free reign on stuff. So
yeah, essentially.
So I really like this here where you have that freedom and flexibility. Now, in addition to this, you also will be populating planets, which will just generate you resources every turn. But each faction is going to use a different aspect of the game in some way, and they're going to make it completely different. So one of the cool things is there's like a whale faction that has amazing converters, but they can't actually use them themselves. They're not allowed to, so they have to trade them to get uses out of them. But you can do cool trades where you're like, hey, if I give this to you for free, can you give me like 2 of the resources you make or stuff like that? So you have to be very calculated, but also very crafty in what you're offering to people. And I think that's really fun. But this game definitely rewards people that are getting into the theme and actually being active and trying to trade. It is a real-time game because you do have a timer that is set for the trade rounds, but it's actually split up into different sections. So the whole core of this is Sidereal Confluence, right? So it's a group of aliens that are coming together and being as peaceful as possible. So what happens is you're doing all this trading, and then you go into this phase where basically all those resources you collected, you're going to be trading those resources in to create technologies. And these technologies are going to be your main point scorers. And you get additional points if you create those technologies early. So you're trying to do it. You could build your engine early, but you're losing out on major bonus points. So you have to kind of, pick and choose between those two things. And once you make that technology, though, everybody else gets access to that technology. So you get the points, but everybody gets access to it, which increases the game. And if you look at the bottom of this converter here, those are technologies required to upgrade that card. So if you're giving technology to somebody that needs it for an upgrade, you're actually helping them out and basically making their converters better. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of give and take on, do you get the points, but you're also helping everybody else out, or do you focus on building that engine? And then after you do that technology, there's an auction phase. You're actually going to be buying planets. You'll use ships to colonize them. It is cool. I really like this game. It's really fascinating. You do need a very specific group to do this. It plays great with 4, 5, 6, but it actually plays with pretty well with high player counts. But this game is very, very much involved. There's a lot going on. It can be pretty overwhelming to look at the table. I'll just show you here, say, a game going on with everybody kind of moving around. This is what the table looks like when you're actually playing. So that could definitely scare some people. But the big thing here is things are very well laid out. They're clean to read. Once you know this system, it's actually going to be very digestible. And I think that it is a very cool game. I think this is very unique. It's one that you should play, but you got to make sure you have that group that's willing and able to play a game like this. So that's my pitch for you on Sidereal Confluence. Super cool theme, super interesting. Love the asymmetry in this game, but a very wild and different experience. So what do you think? How'd I do?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a game I want to try. Again, maybe I'm not sure if I have regular access to the group who would enjoy this with me. So maybe Chinatown is going to be my go-to negotiation game for the meantime. But yeah, I really want to try this one. It looks really cool. It looks like there's a lot of scope for negotiation, which I love. And yeah, it looks really interesting. But going to struggle to get it played, I think. How long does the game take?
So surprisingly short for a game that's this robust, and that's because of the real-time aspect of it. So yeah. I think the game is like 6 rounds, and each round is 10 minutes for the real-time aspect. So it's going to be like an hour on the dot. But once again, that real-time, you're going to have some management in between there. So I would say probably an hour and a half for everything.
Oh, well, more than reasonable then, yeah.
It's not too bad.
I thought you were going to say double that, to be honest.
So the fact that it has the timer built into it is super helpful because it does keep people actually moving along. So I really like that and I appreciate it. Cool. Now, my game for you, I'm not sure what to think about it. And I just want to know, like, this is not malicious or malign or anything. I want to know why this is in your collection, because I have some positives and negatives about this company in general and the specific line of games that they've been putting out. This is for the game Tiny Epic Pirates. So I do like pirate-themed board games. I think they're super fun. I also am very hit or miss with Scott Alm's designs, and particularly in the Tiny Epic series. There's some that I think are absolute garbage. There are some that I think that are really good. Scott Alm's is very hit or miss for me. He's done some amazing things. Warp's Edge by him, awesome. I'll play that game every day. But other games like Tiny Epic Mechs, never again. I will never play that game again. But so it's crazy that he's so high in scope, and this one hits right in the middle there, 7.5, decent playtime, good player counts. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts? I know you did a review on this, but I imagine if you didn't like it, it wouldn't be in your collection still. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this? Should I get this one? Why is this in your collection?
Okay, so I do like this game. I think it's a pleasant game. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I actually share my collection with my brother. My brother bought this game. This isn't my individual game. We kind of shared the collection. So if it was up to me, I wouldn't have bought it. But that doesn't mean, I don't like it. It's perfectly fine. So I think a big aspect of this game was because we both really enjoy the pirate setting. So that's one thing. And I tend to really like rondel games as well. In this game, one of the kind of core, I suppose, the user interface of the game to take your actions is a rondel. It's a pretty simple rondel, but a rondel nonetheless. And it's kind of that. I think we've both been looking for that quintessential, the all-in pirate style game. And this one does have a lot of it. You're managing your crew, you're going searching for treasure, you're fighting other pirate ships, you're trying to do some pick up and deliver. And all those things individually I tend to really like, and this is quite a nice little package for all of that. So I will say that the rondel is a little bit too restrictive because you actually don't have much mitigation to take the spot you need, because so normally in rondel games you can go like up to 3 spaces around it or something, whereas this one you can't do that. You actually have to basically exhaust crew members in order to do it. But it's a perfectly pleasant game. Maybe if it was just my collection, it probably wouldn't stick around, but certainly fundamentally solid. It always impresses me how they kind of add so much going on into such a small little box. So yeah, it's just one of those games that's it's about a 6 out of 10 for me. It's decent, probably slightly better than average, and I wouldn't go out there and sing from the rooftops to tell people to buy this, but I can certainly see there is a big market for it. So yeah, perfectly pleasant, but again, I'm not going to go and advocate it.
All right, so this sounds like one to skip. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. You saved me like $15 or something like that. I don't know how much this one goes for. They're generally pretty cheap, which is kind of nice about the whole line. They do condense it pretty nicely. So that is our why is this in your collection section. Let's jump to A to Z. This is where we go through the alphabet. And today we are on F. So we are looking at some games, one light game and one heavier game. Dan, what do you got for me? What's your light game for today?
Okay, so my light game for today is a strictly 2-player deduction game, or kind of cat and mouse style game called Fugitive. Now, this is by Tim Fowers. And again, a strictly 2-player game where one person is the fugitive, one person's going to be a marshal. And the idea, completely asymmetric, where one person is trying to play these cards, trying to do a bit of bluffing, and basically trying to get to, or climb up this ladder of cards to get to number 30, I think it is, which is going to be basically the escape plane. Where at the same time, the marshal is going to be drawing cards from this same stack as the fugitive is and deducing which steps they've taken. And they're basically ticking off on their little tick sheet, trying to find the locations that they've visited along the way. You can got a bit of push your luck as, you can think, or you can make educated guesses that I think they visited spot 3, then they visited spot 6, and then 7. And you can take big wild guesses and try to guess a bunch at once, or you can take small incremental steps and try to be more sure in the information you're giving. But it's a wonderfully concise little game. The deduction works great. It only takes about 20 minutes to play. The artwork is wonderful. Again, I like how it's so asymmetrical. So you can play one round as the fugitive, then one round as the marshal, and see who did the best. And there's some really cool little flavor cards you can add in to mix play up a bit, or you can play the real kind of the purer version of the game without those kind of wild cards. But yeah, this is, I think, one of the best 2-player games out there. Just looks great. And if you like deduction and you want something that's that works well at 2-player, because I think most deduction games work better at higher player counts, this one is excellent. So yeah, highly recommended filler 2-player game that is Fugitive.
Wow, this one looks great and it sounds great. So I love short 2-player games. That's normally the only 2-player games I'll get to play. So this looks great. The art's amazing. Tim Fowers does some great stuff with his publishing company. This looks fun. So this is neat. I like it. I like that it comes with all the stuff there to, like, it's got the whole package, right? It's beautiful. It's small. It's compact. It's got the score, the deduction sheet with it. Super cool.
Yeah,
I like this one.
I think you'd like it.
Oh, that's good to know. This looks great. Awesome. So that is Fugitive. That's Dan's light game for the letter F. Now, my game that I'm talking about here is one that I've really been enjoying recently. It has a theme that I am in love with, and this is going to be Fleet, the dice game. So I don't know if you know this about me, but I don't know when I realized this, but I really like water-based games, and I love boats, and I love sailing. And this does something really interesting where you actually play as a fleet of fishing ships, and I think that's so neat. But this takes the game of Fleet and puts it into a small roll and write dice game that reminds me a lot of games like Ganshan Clever, where you are basically getting combo after combo after combo. And it's a blast. It's fun to play. It's got a great solo mode, and it has a lot of little additional content to get you coming back and wanting to try different combinations. So I love that this game employs dice drafting. I love that it actually matters what you're doing on other people's turns. I love that there's interaction between the players. And one of the coolest thing is the amount of choices. So this game comes with these giant sheets, and instead of just playing with one sheet, you actually get 2 sheets that you're going to be doing stuff on. So you have one that's kind of got all your abilities and one that has like your scoring and extra abilities. And you're kind of tracking your income, the rounds, you're getting all these effects, and you are kind of building up to these different fishing phases. And all is dice driven. And I think it's super fun. Have you played this one, Dan?
I haven't. No, I've had this again on my radar. I've had nothing but good things about this this little roll and write game, and the ratings on the BGG page are pretty impressive. 7.7 for a little roll and write. I mean, that's got to mean something.
Yeah, totally agree. So once again, the biggest draw here is the fact that it actually has interaction in the game, and I think that's really cool. So once again, a lot of the roll and writes are 1 to like a million, but this one is 1 to 4. Like, you got to play with this amount because you're actually taking the dice. So it's really cool. You can predict things. You can hate draft dice. You can build up on combos. You can set up plays for when people are taking things. It's really fascinating. And the best part of this game has to be the dice themselves, because when you draft them, you're kind of going up this tech tree of different types of fish, and each of those fish has their own ability and how you're going to be progressing the game. And the cool thing about it is you also roll one of those dice at the beginning, and you'll get 3 marks in that category, so you're going to start diversified from other people, which is really cool. So really like this one. Great small game. That's Fleet, the dice game. Love it.
Cool. Right. Yeah, I want to check that one out.
I recommend it. It's a blast.
Cool. So my more involved game is a really strange game, actually. One of the weirdest games I think I've ever played. This is from last year by Friedman Fries, who's known for his bit weird games. This is Faiyum, or Faiyum. I don't know how you pronounce this. So this is, it's going to be hard to explain because there are so many different ways you can score points in this game. It's basically a big desert, or Egypt, with all these different hexes. And you are building buildings, you're building roads, all to score points. But the thing I really love about this game is the actual key mechanism and the card play. So if you're familiar with Concordia, which I'm sure a lot of people watching this will be, it has that great system where you are playing cards, and you can play another card to pick them all back up and go again. This one uses that, but with a slightly more restrictive approach, where you're playing through your cards, But when you use the pickup action, you can only actually pick up the last 3 cards you've played for free, and then for every one you want to go deeper than that, you have to pay for. And that's a real interesting decision, because you want to leave the best cards till last, in order to keep abusing them or keep exploiting them and using them again. But that might not be ideal to do that. So you might have to bury some cards, and then you have to go digging for them again by spending more resources. And that key mechanism is great. And also, if you're familiar with, I suppose, Friedemann Fries's Magnus Opus, his power grid, this one uses the same drafting system where you have this row of cards, and you're basically taking these cards and adding them into your hand, and they keep shifting down, making things cheaper and cheaper. And just the pacing of this game is strange, because the deck of cards is completely random. So you could get really powerful cards early, which come into play a bit later. But again, you've got to keep them in your hand and keep them at the top of the pile, because you want to use them later. It's absolutely fascinating, and I actually am besotted by that system. The game itself is a bit of it does mess with your head quite a bit, and it certainly is a game you need to play a few times to understand how everything comes together. But in its simplicity, it does a great job, and all the ways you gain points are all based on those cards, and they all do very individual things. But yeah, I'm really impressed with this one. Not the greatest of lookers. I think some people are going to like the way it looks. I wasn't so keen on it. Now I'm starting to warm to the way it looks. But yeah, certainly an interesting and innovative design. That is Faiyum.
So Ian says the game looks fun. So I totally agree with him. This looks great. I love the little alligator meeples, but as you described, the card mechanism sounds super cool. So I really like that. I love interesting card play, and this sounds like it delivers on that, and it incorporates the rest of the scoring mechanics into that card system. Good morning, Light Dog. Good morning, Ian. Thanks again for joining us this morning. Yeah, excited to have you here as we talk about all these awesome games. So this is great, Dan. This is what I do want to try, because as you described, it's got that interesting system, and I do like Friedemann Friese games, so I think this one will be cool. Sweet. So the game that I want to talk about for my heavier game is Food Chain Magnate. Now, right off the bat, before I get into this, have you played this one, Dan?
I have, yeah. I played it quite a few years ago now.
Okay. So Food Chain Magnate, for those who do not know, is a game where you play as owners of restaurants. And so you are restaurants and classic diners, and it's your job to make as much money as possible. Now, this game is really interesting because it is extremely cutthroat. And the big thing that you're going to be competing for is not just the money, but also the abilities that are up for grabs in the game. So in the game, you're going to be having what are called milestones. And these milestones are going to give you effects that no one else will have unless they get them in the same round as you do, which happens more often than you think. So a lot of the times, the key play of this game is anticipating what milestones an opponent will get, and then pivoting so you can also claim that while setting yourself up to get more. So a lot of important plays that you're going to be doing this, but it's really neat because if you're going first, you're kind of setting the stage for everybody else, and everybody else is kind of pivoting and reacting to you. It employs this really clever marketing system where you will take your time to sell a specific type of food. However, if you're taking your time to market that food, somebody else might be taking their time to actually make the food. So it has this really interesting mechanic where it's very opportunistic. It reminds me of something like Brass, Birmingham, where you are putting out these resources, but they're up for grabs for anyone. So it's all about manipulating the environment and your cards in order to make sure you're putting situations that you can benefit from. So I love the different upgrade trees in this game. It has this awesome mechanic where your characters, if you use them, you get their effects, but if you kind of keep them in training, you can actually upgrade them into better versions of themselves. So it's this push and pull of, am I going to do something now, or am I going to do something later? And White Dog says, make sure you get that manager first. And I totally agree with you. You got to make sure that you are getting to specific cards first. And really quick, Dan, I do want to interrupt this. Ian has a question for you. Would you say Faiyum is an improvement on Concordia?
So yeah, thanks for joining us, Ian. Absolutely not. No. For me, Concordia is like a 9.5, 10 out of 10. Whereas Faiyum for me is about an 8. But great different takes on that same card system. But yeah, it's not quite in the league of Concordia.
Gotcha. So coming back to Food Chain Magnate, so my favorite thing though in this game is definitely the milestones. They give you really interesting powers, really cool ways to change the game. And my favorite thing is actually in the new expansion, so the catch-up mechanism. It includes an entire new set of milestones, and they are so different, so interesting, so bonkers, and so fun. So I recommend this game very highly. My recommendation for this game is either play it with somebody who's going to teach it to you well, or play it with a group of people that have never played it before. So that would be my recommendation if you're going to learn this game, because this game can be brutal. But that is the point of the game. And once again, don't focus on getting the most money. Focus on basically outpacing your opponents and getting the most money at a single time, because that's really what you're going for. It's not for like incremental money. It's, hey, did I make $150 this turn? If I did, I won. So something like that. So kind of think of it that way, as opposed to like, oh, if I make $10 this round, I can make $20 next round. Focus on getting those large advantages over incremental stuff, and get those mooch as much as possible. That is the way to play. Dan, what'd you think about this game when you played it? So you said you played it years ago, so that means you're not playing it now. So
okay, yeah. So this is quite an interesting one, and I'm glad you said what you said there about playing this with someone who's going to teach it well, and B, teaching it or learning it all together, because this is a game where you can get played big time, and I did. I played this with somebody who was experienced, and they didn't tell us all the different tricks that he's going to go for, and absolutely just annihilated us, and it wasn't fun, and it left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Again, this is an extremely brutal game. It's one of the most cutthroat games I think I've ever played. But that's part of the game, as you said. That it really is what this game is about. You've got to learn when to zig and zag, and just constantly be proactive. Basically, you can't leave yourself in the dust, and you can't take your eyes off the ball. One of the things I did love about it, which you said more than anything, is those milestone cards. I love that mechanism of going down a certain route, get there by this time, or you've lost it. That's a great mechanism, and I'd love to see that used more in different games. But I think it was a little bit too cutthroat for me. Maybe my taste would change now, but yeah, I was ultimately left with a bit of a bad impression, because if you play this with somebody who wants to win, who needs to win to survive, then yeah, you're going to have a really bad time, because I was out of the game in the first 20% of the game, and for the rest of 80% of the game, I was just sat there getting even more further and further behind. So yeah, be prepared for that. But the design itself, objectively, so well done, but just not for me.
So Ian agrees with you. He says he had that exact same experience. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that, Ian. Now, Ian, I've actually had this experience here where I was teaching the game and I thought I did a good job, but I still destroyed the people I played with, and I felt so bad about it. I completely soured them from the game, and I was like, "Dang!" So it's like a weird balance of like trying to figure out. So sorry, Jeff and David. I hope it doesn't happen again. I hope I've done better. But yeah, it can totally happen, and sometimes it's completely unintentional. You're just playing the game right, and you're trying to point your things out. But yeah, I do recommend you do give it a try again, because it is a great game. Like I think it's wonderful. I've had a lot of fun playing and diving into the expansion content, which has been actually great for leveling the playing field, because it introduces new elements that everybody's new to, and I think that's huge, specifically if you switch over to the new milestones, because once again, nobody has played with them if you haven't introduced them yet, and so that really does kind of center that playing field. So I really like that idea. Yeah. Oh, last question on this, Dan. What do you think of the artwork in this game?
I don't mind that kind of kitsch style artwork on the actual cards themselves, but the actual map of the board, that was dreadful. I hated that.
It's lovely. Look at those white squares. I think it definitely fits the theme of this game. So I like the artwork for that, because it definitely reminds me of like, classic layout. It's supposed to represent like, the classic 50s diners mixed with the old school board game layouts that look very similar to this. But so I like what they're going for, but I definitely can understand with like all this productions that we're getting now that it's like, hey, step up your game a little bit. Cool. So that is our A to Z section. Thank you for all that audience participation. Really appreciate it. And now we go into our question for the audience. So this is our poll from last time. This was our audience question on what were your expansion preferences. So Dan has the answer to this question on his poll. And before we do cover these, let's just kind of quickly, briefly go over what ours were again. So Dan, what were your expansion preferences?
So yeah, normally the two kind of things I go for is if an expansion is considered essential to make the game better and to fix a few problems, of course I would consider getting that. And I tend to only get expansions for my favorite games. If I know they're going to stay in my collection long, then I'll certainly almost pick every expansion for my favorite games up. Whereas if I've got that little seed of doubt where I don't think this is going to stand the test of time, then I probably will not look at getting any expansions.
Gotcha. And then for me, I literally buy all the expansions when I buy the core game because I'm under the mindset that I understand this board game hobby. Things do not stay in print very long, so I better jump on that expansion before it gets sold out. And then if I end up hating the game or disliking the expansion, I can always sell it afterwards. So that's my opinion on this. And generally, I feel pretty good about getting expansions because a lot of the expansions are more stuff expansions. That's my favorite type of expansion, where it just adds more additional content. We talked about this before, and this is, I like stuff like that. I don't really like expansions that add like a whole nother thing that just kind of seems shoehorned in there. But sometimes games that do that, it actually works well. So, and you'll never know unless you try, right? So, that's kind of my opinion on there.
Okay, so we'll go through the answers then. So it was quite hard to categorize the different options to choose here because there are so many different reasons why people might pick up expansions. But the categories I put on were that they, the question itself was, what is your philosophy on buying board game expansions? First option being that they never or rarely buy expansions, and that was a 15% of the vote. Of 410 votes, so not insignificant. One was that they only buy expansions when a game needs new life injected into it. So if you're starting to get a bit tired of a game and you want something just to give it a bit of energy, then that was only 7%. So that was actually the lowest result, which I was quite surprised by. The next one is that they only buy expansions when that expansion is considered essential, and that was quite a big 32%. So again, they probably overlook quite a few expansions if it is just the kind of shoehorn thing in, as you mentioned. The next option was that I often buy expansions to try new variations of my game. So this is pretty much willing to give it a go, and you'll pick things up just to see what it adds. And that was the biggest result with 35% of the vote. So yeah, most people buying expansions just to try new variations of their favorite games. And then the final philosophy was Mackenzie's philosophy of always buying every expansion available. And that was the second lowest with 11%.
So we have some additional comments here to kind of show us what they're thinking. So Ian says that he wants the expansions, but he's raising younger gamers, can make them too complex. That's totally valid, totally makes sense. That's a huge thing to consider when getting expansions.
Absolutely.
And then Jonathan here, he says that he loves more stuff expansion the best, followed closely by modular. Totally agree. Because love modular, you can pick and choose. Dan, what's a modular expansion that you really enjoy from a game that you really like?
We spoke about it last time. Teotihuacan's a really good one. You plug this bit in, plug that bit in, and I actually really like the modular or the modularity of Merlin. I know we spoke about Merlin quite a bit, but I love the way that you can add this in, add that in, take some bits out, put this one in. So I think Merlin's a really good example of a modular game or expansion content.
Makes sense. I really like the modular expansions in Viticulture. I think those are super nice. And the Essential Edition, like you can choose to use the board. You can use the board with buildings. You can use the mamas and papas. I love that those are they're up to you if you want to use them. And I really like that. And then Light Dog says that just give us more cards. I love it.
Yeah.
So yes, just give us more cards, please. I love variability. And that's the easiest way to do it, right? The only thing with that is sometimes you can get that bloat. Like, I don't know if you've played, if you played Wingspan with all the new birds, oh my gosh, that game with all the birds is ridiculous. Or if you play Terraforming Mars with all the cards, holy crap, that thing is ridiculous too. Oh man. Have you experienced that? What game have you played where it's like that?
Well, yeah. You said the problem is it's almost like a different type of bloat, because although the rules are the same, you're just watering down the strategies you can do because the cards are diluted. I think one of them was I think Laws of Waterdeep with the expansion, because there were particular cards that needed certain other cards for it. And if you played with all the other stuff, then the chances of you drawing those type of cards are massively declined. So it's just, it's one of those things that will be very delicately balanced in terms of keeping things balanced, because although more content is great, sometimes that will throw things off center and completely make the game imbalanced. So it's a very difficult thing to achieve.
Yep, totally agree. And then once again, I am going to go ahead and open up the chat if you have any additional comments or questions for us before we do close up. But we do have a question for you before we finish up today, and this one will be on my channel. Now, this question is for next week. The question is, what is your preferred game weight? So this can be a medium, light, heavy game. These are games that there's a rating scale on boardgamegeek.com that basically levels the complexity of a specific game. Lighter games are generally going to have less mechanics. Heavier are going to have a lot more involved things, lots of pieces moving. Dan, what's your opinion? What are your favorite styles of games?
I like a lot of, obviously, of course, everything's in its individual right. But if I had to choose one category, I would say I would fall just into that medium heavy category. So not the heaviest, not just a slight touch above the medium, just that extra layer or two of complexity just to keep me satisfied. But yeah, of course, there are great games in every single category. And, a lot of the times the weight isn't in the rules themselves, it's in the choices. So, but yeah, if I had to choose, I'd choose medium heavy. How about yourself?
I definitely fall into that same category. I think probably earlier into the hobby, I'd probably follow, this is just the development of me as a gamer. I'd probably follow into that, lighter, medium category. But I do like medium heavy. I like something that's easy to play, but not something that I have to sit there and think, extremely deeply about and have to sit there for hours mulling over what I'm going to do and remembering if I'm doing something right and the future implications of 20 turns down the line. I like thinking about like maybe 4 turns or 6 turns down the line, but 20 or that kind of gets to me. I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Of making sure every single thing I do is absolutely perfect to win a game. So that can really get me. Do you fall into that trap sometimes of thinking too far into the future?
Yeah, I said I'm completely with you. That 3-4 turns ahead, you've got that ability to do that if you want to, but if you do trip up, you're not going to be out of the game. So yeah, I like a little bit of leeway, a little bit of forgiving nature of the game, just a tiny bit, but not too much. But yeah, if it's something like a Vital Lacerda game where you've got to line things up like clockwork, then that can be a little bit too much for me.
Totally agree. Now we have some comments here. So Light Dog says that specifically for his more cards, he wants more cards for Millennium Blades because that's a CCG simulator. I agree with this one. I think you can always have more cards for that game because that just adds more combinations. But let's be real. Millennium Blades has like 2 gigantic boxes full of cards. Does it really need more cards? I don't think that one does. That one has so many cards. There's no way you're going to play all those combinations. Oh my gosh. Have you played that one yet, Dan?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. Well, we'll see you later, Ian. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. And he says for his weight, whatever Twilight Imperium is. So thanks for joining us this morning. See you later. And then Takaijo says her opinion on expansions are gotta catch them all. I totally agree with you. Takaijo, I don't know if you were here earlier, but I talked about my troubles trying to find all the expansions for Capital Lux, and you've sent me down a rabbit hole that I'm having issues finding. So thanks so much for that. So we'll see if I can find them all. But that is the conclusion to Corporate Cardboard for this week. So thank you so much for being here. Anything else you'd like to add before we close, Dan? Any news, anything that we should be checking out on your channel? Once again, please make sure you're subscribed to Chairman of the Board. That's where our Corporate Cardboard is every other time. And Dan just puts out incredible content in general. So go check him out.
Oh, thank you very much. Just a standard, really. I've got a nice intake of games to be reviewed. So as I mentioned earlier, my Anno 1800 review, which is quite a hot game at the moment, will be up probably in the next day or two. Got Imperium and lots of exciting games to try out, old and new, and just always trying to smash that content out, really.
Gotcha. Now, one thing I do want to add before we close is I did recently just open up a Patreon for Side Game LLC, so we do have some bonus content there. Tomorrow, I'll have a video that's kind of going over all the stuff that's going to be on that Patreon. So please take a look over that. Really appreciate the continual support and everybody who has helped the Side Game channel grow. So thank you so much for all that support. One more comment here before we close up. Tekhenu says, "Just got here. Sorry about Capital X. Aporta stocks them on the site." Oh, do they? I mean, specifically trying to find I think it's called the Undercover expansion. It's the purple cards. It's like the fifth color. That's what I'm looking for in particular. So, I mean, if you can hook a brother up, let me know. That'd be fantastic. But that is all for today. Thank you again so much, Dan, for joining me for Corporate Cardboard. This has been a blast. And thank you, everybody in the comments. Jonathan, Ian, Light Dog, Tekhenu. Thanks so much for being here and for all of your comments and involvement. This has been great. But thank you so much for watching, everybody. Side Game Strong.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.
See ya.